Welcome to Monica Knits. Today, Monica will demonstrate her favorite provisional cast-on.
A provisional cast-on is used when the stitches of the cast-on row will be picked up and knitted at a later stage. It can be used to provide a live row of stitches for joining in the round, like with this headband, for beginning a toe-up sock, reversible knitting, or adding a hem or other embellishment. This glove was started with a provisional cast-on at the wrist because it is a long glove and I wasn't sure how long it would be until afterwards.
Monica prefers this provisional cast-on method because it is quick, it uses a small amount of waste yarn, and it unravels readily when needed.
For a provisional cast-on, you will require your fashion yarn. You'll require a piece of waste yarn in the same weight as your fashion yarn. You'll require the knitting needles, in this case they're 2 3/4 millimeters, in the size that you will be knitting the fashion fabric in, and you'll require a crochet hook of similar weight, in this case 3 millimeters, in order to do the provisional cast-on. Select a crochet hook sized suitably for the yarn weight. The knitting needle is the size you will be using for your project. The waste yarn should be similar in type and weight to the project yarn, but in a contrasting color. Use wool with wool and cotton with cotton. If the yarn is an eyelash, mohair, or other fuzzy yarn, substitute a firm yarn of a weight that matches the base yarn of the project. A fuzzy or easily split provisional yarn can make unraveling provisional stitches cumbersome. Make a slip knot with the waste yarn and place this loop on the crochet hook. Take your knitting needle, hold it in your left hand, and place the yarn underneath the knitting needle. Draw a loop through the crochet hook and then repeat the process. Pass the yarn under the knitting needle, draw a long loop through, pass it under the needle, draw a loop over the knitting needle, and repeat the process until you have the number of stitches recommended by the pattern. Repeat the process until you have the number of stitches recommended for the pattern, then add a few extra. I normally add anywhere from 3 to 5 stitches, and the last stitch on the hook is then placed on the end of the needle. Now you're ready to start knitting with the fashion fabric. Start knitting with your fashion yarn. And when you get to the end, you'll have a few extra stitches that you put on as insurance. They serve 2 purposes. One, if you've miscounted and you need an extra stitch, you have it. If you drop a stitch along the way, you have it. And the other purpose is to make it easy when you unravel to identify the very last stitch required. When you've completed your first row of knitting, you'll see this is the end of the cast-on provisional, and this is the beginning where I had a few extra stitches, so it's very easy to identify the end from the beginning. And when you use a high contrast yarn, you can really easily see the original stitches to pick up later.
For more tips and techniques, visit monicanits.com. We value your feedback. Please leave your suggestions for future videos.